out at the end of the month. The Agony and Ecstasy of Watain, another band with a very extremely elaborate insertion of themselves into their album title. The one thing that Pup and Watain will have something in common. Alex, next door neighbours, he's been hanging around at the Watain compound, seeing what kind of things they get up to. Now, it's been a tricky few years for Watain. Pretty much entirely of their own making. This is a band who, a decade ago, were pretty much the biggest thing in black metal, who were doing things, interacting with the mainstream of metal in a way that was like massively exciting and kind of unthinkable for most bands like them. If you are someone who, you know, now comes into our Facebook group and goes, I don't really know much black metal, like what kind of stuff should I be listening to get into it? 10 years ago, Watain would have been the first band out of anyone's mouth, the way that Behemoth have been since. And now, I think for non-musical reasons but cultural ones, I'm no longer looking to Watain to blow up in the mainstream or whatever. I think that the way that they carry themselves is too at odds with that. And just to lay this down before we go into our album review, if you are someone who does not want to go any further with Watain because of some of these stupid things that they have said or done, that is fine. Those distinctions are yours to make. Skip this album review. And for a band like Watain, who very much flirt with controversy and inflammatory content without ever aligning themselves to, shall we say, the truly nasty stuff that would make us draw a line between us and this band, you will have your own barometer for how much that stuff is going to put you off, which is very much respected by us. I have a very passionate connection with this band's music, the kind of which you only really get as a music listener for like a small handful of artists in your life who are to be your favourites. And personally, that does mean dealing with some of the nonsense when it arises. But for me, a Watain release is one of the big ones of any year that I will be looking forward to. This is coming off of 2018's Trident Wolf Eclipse, which was my album of the year that year, and that album I don't even think is in the top 3 of their career. Lawless Darkness from 2010 was in fact my #1 album of the decade. Alec, the interesting thing about Trident Wolf Eclipse, and what the major talking point of it was, that period that I was speaking about when Watain were like on the cusp of bringing black metal to the masses, or whatever you want to say, like to the most of any band of their generation, they were doing so with records that were incredibly committed to the idea and aesthetics of black metal as you think of it. That's Watain's thing. They are torch carriers of what you imagine as an archetypal black metal spirit more than they are sunbathers. But they were doing that with records that were unbelievably inventive and strange within that idea, like The Wild Hunt. Trident Wolf Eclipse came back and decided to eschew all of that expansion and write a pure to the throat barbaric black metal ripper as an intentional move for that one record. So, the Agony and Ecstasy of Watain, our previous 2 Watain albums, are on the one hand, The Wild Hunt, and on the other, Trident Wolf Eclipse. Very at odds. What do you think about where they have taken their approach in their aftermath?
I mean, I think it dials back the clock a little bit to around kind of like Lawless Darkness, Wild Hunt kind of levels of, we are a traditional black metal band in that we worship Bathory and and bands like Dissection, which again, Dissection, another thing that Watain have long been associated with, which people will have problems with as well. And if you do, I get that as well. But yeah, it sounds like that. There are little variations that they do, and like it's a lot more expansive than Trident Wolf Eclipse, which, while it was straight ahead, I know a few people were like, oh yeah, it sounds like the debut Rabid Death's Curse. It's like,
no, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds like 2018 Watain doing a fucking brutal barbaric record, which is great.
Yeah, it was still like sophisticated, and like it had a lot going on, but it was just like straight down the line, just fucking like get you by the throat. And this isn't quite like that. It does have some moments. It does start pretty much exactly the same with a big explosion noise.
Yeah, it's the first one recorded with their expanded live lineup, which doesn't include that guy anymore.
Yeah,
and it's kind of apt how, like, all encapsulating of their experiences of being a band that they're angling with this title. Because to me, this feels like just like a nice summation of what this band is about. Even the length, 50 minutes. It's much chunkier than the lightning quick slash to the throat of Trident Wolf Eclipse. But it's not a 70-minute odyssey through hell like Lawless Darkness or The Wild Hunt. It's neither their most intense or their most adventurous record. So maybe it has potential to fall between the cracks a little bit. But if it's your first taste of Watain, you will get a really good sense of what kind of world you're walking into. And the word world, for me, always applies with Watain. You feel like you are taking in the sights and the smells of, you know, having your head held to the fucking portal that's been opened and all the things that are spilling out of it. Pure black metal, otherworldly, reaching out into darkness, but with a bunch of really memorable, really skillfully constructed fucking jams like through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, it's their 7th album. Like, they still sound like fucking Eric sounds so feral. Like, just when he's spitting out these just like horrible like litanies. And again, it's that thing. Like, it is black metal and it is aggressive and it is harsh, but it's produced well. It sounds like I don't think it's not like you're giving someone Transylvanian Hunger or something.
God no.
It's fairly like all right to listen to if you've not delved too far into something like black metal. The songs are really good. They write good songs. They write hooks. They write big choruses. They have lots of melodic guitars. They have like weird little turns that I'm sure we will discuss. There's a lot going. I do agree with you about how it's kind of, I wouldn't say comfortable, but it's a nice. It's a good summation of what Watain is. Like, if someone wanted not necessarily the best Watain album, but what does Watain sound like, I think this would be a very good shout.
Yeah. Sam, you are cult enough to know some Watain material and to have seen them live and everything, but perhaps a little in the rearview mirror for you, perhaps. How did you find returning to them with this?
So, like, I think The Wild Hunt is a amazing album. Like, that is the one Watain album I'm like, I mean, this is going to like probably like get me head by like a lot of true fans. I think They Rode On is the best song Watain have written. Like,
It's one of the best.
I think that song is
Waters of Vain, it will always be the best, but They Rode On.
I mean,
is
I've not
special.
delved deep enough in like, but that's the song that like made me like seeing them live, and that song was kind of like what got me into Watain. I didn't really care for Trident Wolf Eclipse. It stripped away all the things I kind of liked. The really,
okay, maybe this is this a little bit too, I guess, still just close to the pure idea of what Watain is like. Then.
This is kind of in the middle, and I think this album is fine. I think like the really savage, aggressive black metal stuff like goes hard. Ecstasy and the Night Infinite is a really ferocious opener. It's really intense. The Howling is kind of similar. Like, it's got that funny fart gong at the end. Like,
I've never made that connection before.
Yeah, like no, I think like this album kind of, because like I think this album kind of goes through again 2 halves. So the first half of it is very intense, just trad black metal like aggression, and then it opens up a bit more in the second half. But it is like you said, it's very well produced. It sounds. I don't think there's hooks on this. I can't necessarily agree with like there's hooks and catchy bits, but
what beneath, beyond, behind, below.
Maybe 1 or 2.
Ceremosa. No, it's fucking. Eric is like fucking. There aren't ghost hooks on this, and if you need clean choruses, this isn't for you. But the charismatic focal point of Watain is like fucking beyond 99%.
It's funny because he's just the most like one note kind of just like evil black metal vocal performance, but he does have more character to it. I do agree there. Like there's not much dynamics to his vocals, but he kind of commits to the evil master of ceremonies.
Yeah, and he's kind of legible in kind of phrasing and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I think this album is all right. Like, I have kind of struggled a little bit with some of the other stuff with Watain. It's kind of soured my feelings on them a bit more, and I think that's why the whole cycle of Trident Wolf Eclipse kind of just went a bit downhill for me. Yeah. And I know they have got rid of that one member who was just a live member. Fine. I'm still a little bit uncomfortable with how comfortable they're associating with that, but I don't know, maybe it's because they are just so like their views of the whole like evil Satanism stuff that they can kind of just it still just makes it a little hard for me to really invest, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, Ecstasy and Night Infinite has the thing that something like Nuclear Alchemy last time out had, in that it makes the very traditional idea of black metal feel incredibly extreme and teeth gnashing. Like the kind of black metal that Watain play, it's based in Swedish and Norwegian black metal of the 20th century. They're just taking that forward. And black metal has evolved in many more alien and freakish shapes since then. But Watain play with such a ferocity that makes that older style of black metal sound as thrilling as the first day it turned up. That explosion in like where it sounds like your speakers are going to blow out. It's like the BM equivalent of a sub drop near enough.
Yeah.
Like it's mental, and it's so rampantly aggressive. Like the stop starts of that, and where it throws you the little like little kind of little bones of here is a riff to get a hand on before we go off again. It's mental, and you also have the frenetic tempo of something like Leper's Grace as well. Like it's actually startling.
Yeah, like we had this on in the house, and like my partner was like, "Can you please turn it off? It's actually quite stressful." Like, it's just like, especially like that opening run is like again the build to that explosion is like so. Oh my god, like it just builds and builds and builds. Yeah, I think it's that thing that they are. Like they have described themselves in the past as like black metal traditionalists, and they want to uphold these values and musical ideas that they love and that they fell in love with like back in the day when they were teenagers. And they're not quite getting the caps on with the little AKs, defend pop punk kind of thing. But it's like that is their attitude. They want this to be like an example of how you do it. But they're not just like stuck in the past.
I think that's part of what like the appeal of just that the base hellish spectral thing that black metal is kind of most understandably conveyed through a band like Watain in just like how great and empowering the music is. Like the thrust of fucking power in really accessible black metal riffing is the thing that I think Watain have done literally better than every band ever, and that is just the base default mode for them. And it's like even the production and guitar tone is incredibly distinctive as theirs. They tracked this one live for the first time, like I said, but the way that there is so much space and room to breathe in the smoke of this record while also being like punchy and heavy and immediate is quite a trick that they've cracked with their long-time producer. I think you're right, Sam, in terms of like obviously as it goes on it introduces more ideas. I do think like variation back to back of that first run is pretty great. Like Ecstasy Night Infinite is so like it's the most rabid explosive thing on the record. The Howling is like here's an anthem of this style. Ceramosa really like goes in a different direction again across the board. Like the fucking the melodic grandeur is really in there in Septentrion at the very end, which sounds just like Alec. That song, it feels like so classic black metal in a way that it's drawing of the sensation of those Norwegian bands in a way that just like communicates with my soul in such a natural, ingrained way. There's a riff in the middle that sounds like something straight off of an Unholy Trinity Dart Throne record.
Yeah, well, it's that word Septentrion. That's like an old Latin word to describe like the North. Like that is exactly
yeah. It sounds
like.
Even though it has that Dart Throne thing to that one riff, it's like massive and sprawling while you are like riding this kind of black metal chariot, which I think is the balancing act that Watain have done in the kind of 21st century.
I do agree with that. I think they get like this is epic sounding, like vast, sprawling music while still sounding evil and heavy. I think that I'll give them credit that they do a really good job of balancing that, of making it sound big without stripping away any of the darkness of the music.
Yeah, like kind of almost straight up but expansive at the same time. It's a weird kind of balancing act that they've done, and it's just the thing that black metal does of sounding genuinely like larger than other types of extreme metal in terms of like the vastness of atmosphere and that kind of like black expanse of when you're listening to it, even if it's not the most gutturally heavy thing or whatever. And they do make it sound so huge and so anthemic, where The Howling was, I thought, a really great single when it came out, but it was slightly hard to pass the album's direction from it, because it's just like, here is just an example of just fucking incredible classic Watain black metal songwriting. And you look at that and it's like how memorable and impactful every single turn of pace in that is. The double bass gallops, the punky breaks in the middle, the opening picking, just like punching the air on those cymbal smashes, the enormous sweeping melodic opening up in contrast to mere seconds later that beneath, beyond, behind, below part at such speed where it's the words are just like tumbling out of Eric's mouth. And like when you consider how far Mole have gotten with a guy making one sound, here you do have that enormous call of like The Howling and how fucking just enrapturing that is. And, the Fuck the World on Serimosa, like, they do deliver actual anthems in this black metal style, which is important to why their music has been able to remain kind of appealing.
Yeah, and they do it in different ways as well, like the Slithering Hither Withershins in the fucking... What a dumb name for a song, Black Cunt, which again is something that I'd not clocked before, because obviously I saw that and I was like, oh, they mean like an evil, devilish fanny. That's what that means, right?
Straight away, you instinctively know what that song is if you are ingrained in black metal. And you look at the lyrics, and that's 100% what it is. No fucking inference of anything differently. But again, how a normal person is going to look at that and not have this kind of context and go, oh no, which is what happened.
Yeah, I think the thing is, it's not Stephen Graham from This Is England saying it, so it's all right. But
I think that they are so good at just continually refining and sharpening the knife edge of songs and keeping you alert. And the amount of tempo jumps that Leper's Grace takes, and they'll be brought in with some fucking like mad rototom fill or something that will make your ears prick up as the next riff comes in. There's one part 3:30 into the Howling when there's this little snare flurry that breaks up the last riff, like right out of the 80s Metallica score, like dun 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 dun, and it happens only once, and it's like, that is as catchy as anything else on this entire album. Just one moment, and they are so good at like taking a 4-minute song and filling it with just moments like that in such an anthemic, like black metal style. I think the production sound and general aggressive feel of the riffing isn't too dissimilar from Trident Wolf Eclipse. That's what I felt when The Howling was the only song out, and I said as much to Eric when I spoke to him, and he, with the knowledge that fucking We Remain and that are on here like the rest of the album, he was a little surprised that I got on that. But it's the serious aggression on the album tempered with more of that patience and gothic flair, where you go, here it makes sense that Watain hang out with Tribulation and In Solitude and those type bands, because there's a bit more space for those things here than All Out Murder. There's a little high-end goth rock guitar lick over the Celtic Frost riff in the middle of Black Cunt, and it's so sinister and sly and playful, and there's something so darkly catchy about it. In terms of the singles that really went for that, Serimosa has been like a grower, I think, because that sounds like it's so open. Like, that's not, when you think of the Trident Wolf thing, or the first track on this album, and how little room to breathe there is. It's just like, fucking catch the moments of breath when you have it. Serimosa is like all grandeur.
Yeah, and again, he manages to make Fuck the World sound like massive.
That's just a rallying chant, that, isn't it? That's the kind of shit we're talking about.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, like there are so many moments on this record where he there's just different ways of making things sound massive. Like you mentioned, We Remain. Like that was a real like standout for me. And like, even though it kind of comes paired with Before the Cataclysm, which even though it starts quite like fast and thunderous and all that, it then kind of trundles into that kind of more like epic, kind of like larger than life thing. And that's 7.5 minutes long Before the Cataclysm. It just whizzes by.
Yeah, really like expressive chords there, which is much more melancholic and weepy than anything that was on the last record. And for that, you are looking to like, the magnificent ending of Lawless Darkness as an album, and how genuinely stirring that is. Like, this band with their melodies amid all the kind of fire, they do have that feeling. Serimosa is, using classic metal songwriting and tempos to kind of lay down those foundations while upping the, ritualistic evil atmosphere, which is the same shit I loved about Sworn to the Dark and Lawless Darkness fucking years ago. It's almost minimalist how like simply translatable that riff and feel is, not to mention how fucking Dracula, his organ, that descending riff, and that, that's a feeling I love. It's the subterranean infernal world of a Watain album. It's the place I'm going to want to spend most of my time. It's, it took me a couple of listens, but there is a nice bit of variation in that this time, where, again, compare The Howling to Serimosa, as the first two singles that are next to each other on the album, really different in feel, and that does develop as you go across the album into, as you say, Before the Cataclysm, and when we got sent this album, the real track that stood out from the others is what they've ended up releasing as the third advanced single, We Remain, which features Gottfried Arman from In Solitude on lead guitar, but also Farideh Lamucci of The Devil's Blood on vocals. Two bands no longer around, but spiritual kin of Watain without being at all really sonic kin. When that comes in on the back end of the track list, and Farideh's unmistakable voice rises out of that extreme murk and darkness of it, I am so fucking sucked in to the pitch black expanse of that when it arrives.
That is a cool moment on this record. It is this like really cavernous, like dark, expansive track, and just having that dramatic vocal come in as something different does make it stand out. And it is a really like big song that for me is kind of the standout of the back end of the album for sure. Like I like it's cool that they still want to like add in these moments where they kind of go, we can go big and vast and epic without it just being evil black metal kind of traditionalism. So I liked that song.
Yeah, well, I mean, as someone who isn't really bothered by them just writing great black metal songs, but like you've said, They Rode On is like your favourite thing this band have ever done.
Yeah.
This is the
They Rode On of this album, yeah.
In terms of like, it's not as far a leap, but in terms of just like stepping into a different kind of feeling, like it makes sense. Like I knew that would be the one. Even if you hated this record, you go, that song's pretty cool.
Yeah, no. Like I don't hate this record. I think like
yeah,
it is totally like when they're doing the straight black metal thing, it's really good at that for a lot of the reasons you've said. I don't quite hear like the catchy stuff that you guys hear, but I just don't have my ears tuned to black metal the way you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. Later, we are going to talk about a Cancer Bats record, and that is a band who primarily use harsher vocals to deliver big like hooks and stuff like that, and you will have no problem going, oh wow, that's how catchy. That is from a hardcore kind of mindset. Imagine being a black metal lover, and I think you can kind of see
totally. Like it's just how like it's always just fun hearing you two just like gush about like black metal hooks and stuff, the way like I'll do about like the big nice emo and punk bands I love.
Yeah, it's just like the Howling and Saramosa and shit. They are metal anthems just in this black metal style. But going back to We Remain, I love it so much. Like, I love how much it feeds into the atmosphere and feeling that I associate with Watain without having to be like a full-on black metal track. And that's the kind of thing that makes this band so peerless to me. I can't believe it took this long to get Farida on a Watain track, but it's like fulfilling a promise that feels like it was made ages ago. Like, her voice is just enrapturing and chilling all at once. No one sounds more like they are partaking in something mystical and sinister. And you pair that with the fucking like husky, oh, we remain, like hypnotic and so like evocative in the mind's eye, the fucking plinky plonky percussion falling down around it. It's masterful. Like, the ebbs and flows of it and how rallying and immersive it is in such a sparse, dark sound. Like, yeah, you chalk that up as a win.
Totally transportative into the world. Like that's when we talk about the world of this album. That is the moment where even I just find myself getting completely pulled in and immerse myself in this gothic grandeur of just pure evil. It's really cool.
Yeah, and like when you have Farida, like as soon as she came in, like I didn't know she was on it, and I was like, oh no, that's Farida from the Devil's Blood, right? And when she is like singing alongside Eric, and it's that whole like he's doing that like we remember her, and he's like that really dry, hoarse kind of delivery against her really like rich, deep voice. When he does that we remember her bit into that fucking lift into Gottfried's solo, it is bliss at that moment. It's so fucking good, that bit.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like it'll upset people like They Rode On did, which if you're not familiar, Watain once did a cleanly sung Western style ballad, and it's literally one of the best songs ever written by an extreme metal band, but it made people who only listen to Marduk so fucking angry with Watain. We Remain gets to be a different style song while being, closer to home for, that lot. That riff in the second half of Septentrion when shit just kicks off like this, but they feel alive and spontaneous and just shit kicking in a way that most bands just don't, while being able to dwell in things like We Remain for so long.
As I mentioned, when you talk about like shit kicking riffs, there is one in the song with the dodgy title where it just sounds like a proper hardcore two-stepping riff that comes in.
Yeah,
out
I think
of nowhere.
that's the Celtic Frosty one I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, I'm like moments like that. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. They like I think I've understood how good some of the riffing is, because like the riffing does slam.
No, it's fucking top drawer. They're an incredible metal band.
Yeah, and I think all of those elements are great. It just, I don't know if it's just the songs don't entirely come. A lot of the songs don't entirely come together for me, but the moments where it does are really good. And yeah, like I've already expressed that. Like I don't know, it's just kind of hard for me to separate my feelings for some things on this album. But you guys have kind of sold it better than I can.
Yeah, the feeling of like the Watain live show of just like fire at them on the tips of your hair, pig's blood in your nostrils.
It's the smell.
Yeah, it's a pretty efficient encapsulation of that feeling on a record. I think if you are looking for black metal this year, this is just like a fucking top class example of songwriting within it. I don't think it's close to being Watain's best, and it feels more like a visit back to Watain land rather than like the Wild Hunt or Trident Wolf Eclipse in their distinct directions feel like real statements. This, I think it's more like a press the reset button of like, here are all the things that make up the ideal of a Watain album. And I'm excited to see where that takes them next. I'm looking forward to getting my vinyl through. It feels quite reliable, but like, The Howling on one end and We Remain on the other are literally two of my favourite songs this year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're getting your Watain tea towel, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying, Perrin. I still think it's one of my favourite records of the year so far.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Alec,
I'm curious. How far do you see Watain albums like this going in today's landscape? Are these just for the fans, or is there more in it? How much legs do you think it realistically has?
I think they're like, in terms of like quote unquote commercial appeal, I think that's gone. I think they are still comfortably one of the kind of larger black metal bands out there today, but I don't see a kind of like Behemoth style kind of step up. I don't think. I think part of it is just because of
PR disasters.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think part of it is just them, because they are just like, as people, they are just like,
they're outsiders. They are
like, different. Yeah. As in you think it's an act. As in, like, if you read interviews with them and you see kind of like interviews and like pictures and like what people write about them, but it isn't an act. And I think that's it's something that they are proud of and that they want to uphold. But I think in terms of actually bringing their like music to more people, I think it might do more harm than good. But that's not why they're making black metal. They're not making black metal to sell millions of records.
Yeah, I think bands like Watain are having more and more questions asked of them for good reason, and Watain are pretty uninterested in altering how they interact with that and how they present themselves. So I agree with you in terms of like, also just in terms of like how large the leaps their music is making. This isn't, the Wild Hunt. So I think they've made their kind of breakthrough records and now they are kind of on a level. But, if you're talking about bands who, really fucking laid a lot of foundations and did a lot of fucking heavy lifting in terms of getting stuff like this out into the world. And I do think, if you are casually interested in black metal and you don't really know much about the music, they are still, on a record like this, one of the bands who I would put on first to make your average metal fan go like, wow, I get it, because this rips.